15 Appalachian towns that vanished overnight, never explained. What happens when a town just disappears? Not a slow fade over decades of decline, but overnight. One day, it's a living community, carved into the ancient, brooding Appalachian mountains. The next, it's a ghost story, a name on a map that leads to nothing but silence and a million questions. History books will tell you about collapsed economies and people moving away. But the locals, the families who have lived in the shadow of these hills for generations, they tell a different story. It's a story of whispers in the woods, strange lights in the sky, and of something ancient in the hills that sometimes gets hungry. The Appalachian Mountains are ancient, one of the oldest ranges on Earth. They're a place of stunning beauty, deep tradition, and a history written in coal, timber, and blood. But under the green canopy and rolling fog, there's a secret geography, a map of lost places and forgotten people. It seems for every town that made it, another one vanished, swallowed by the forest, drowned by a new lake, or erased by forces that don't have an easy explanation. These aren't just stories about hard times. They are tales that blur the line between historical fact and chilling folklore, suggesting that in these mountains, the past isn't really past. Today, we're uncovering 15 of these lost communities, exploring the unsettling legends and real-life tragedies left behind. We're taking a journey through a landscape of fact and fiction, where the only thing clearer than the mystery is the feeling that you are not alone. Number 1. Millbrook Hollow, West Virginia. We start with a story so chilling and complete, it has become a modern legend whispered across the internet. The tale of Millbrook Hollow, West Virginia, is the perfect example of a town that vanished overnight. The legend says that on a cold October morning in 1953, a state trooper on patrol found the town completely empty. All 923 residents were gone. What he discovered was an impossible scene. Homes were unlocked, breakfast was still on the table, and coffee was steaming in cups. Cars sat in driveways with the keys still in the ignition. The entire town had apparently evaporated in the middle of their morning routine. The story gets even stranger. Investigators supposedly found no signs of a struggle, no notes, and no clues. It was as if every man, woman, and child was plucked from existence all at once. The legend claims the government then swooped in, wiping the town from official maps and classifying all records. Online forums talk about declassified documents pointing to a massive cover-up, secret tunnels, and some ancient technology hidden in the mountains. It's a perfect, terrifying story. But let's hit the brakes for a second. It's important to be crystal clear here. Despite the vivid details, and no matter what you may have seen in viral videos claiming this is a declassified secret, there are zero credible records that a town named Millbrook Hollow ever existed in West Virginia. None. No census data, no official state reports from 1953 detailing a mass disappearance. Millbrook Hollow is a ghost story for the digital age, a piece of creepypasta so effective it's often mistaken for fact. It just goes to show that the region's folklore isn't just a thing of the past. It's still being written today, proving our willingness to believe that in the deep, dark woods of Appalachia, anything is possible. Number 2. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Not all towns vanish in a flash. Some disappear in agonizing slow motion, a death that unfolds over decades. That's the story of Centralia, Pennsylvania, a town being eaten from below by a fire that's been burning for over 60 years. Tucked into Pennsylvania's coal region, Centralia was once a busy mining town of over 1,000 people, with churches, schools, and a tight-knit community. Its fate was sealed in May 1962. The exact cause is still debated, but the most accepted theory is that a fire set to burn trash in an old strip mine pit accidentally lit an exposed vein of anthracite coal. It was a fatal error. The fire wasn't put out properly and started to spread through the maze of abandoned mine tunnels beneath the town. For years, Most residents had no idea an inferno was raging under their feet. But by the late 70s, the signs were impossible to ignore. The ground grew hot. Toxic gases like carbon monoxide started leaking into basements, and the earth itself began to buckle and split open. The turning point came in 1981 when a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski fell into a sinkhole that suddenly opened in his backyard. It was a 150-foot deep pit of hot mud and deadly gas. He only survived by grabbing a tree root. This event finally brought national attention to Centralia. Faced with an unstoppable fire and the constant threat of sinkholes, the government stepped in. In 1984, Congress set aside over $42 million to relocate the residents. Most families took the deal. Their homes were torn down, and the town was slowly wiped off the map. Today, Centralia is a modern ghost town. A handful of residents refuse to leave and still live there, but the streets are cracked and overgrown, with smoke and steam still hissing from fissures in the ground. It's a town that's being slowly swallowed by an underground fire that experts think could burn for another 250 years. Number 3. Vindex, Maryland. Some towns fade, others burn, but the story of Vindex, Maryland, has a different kind of chill, one born from a specific, terrifying legend. Vindex was a classic Appalachian coal town, built by a mining company in the early 20th century to house its workers. It was a company town through and through. The company owned the homes, the store, and, in many ways, the lives of the miners who worked below. For years, Vindex was a place of hard work, close community, and constant danger. The town started to decline as the coal ran out, and the mine became less profitable. Families moved on, looking for work elsewhere. By the middle of the century, Vindex was already becoming a ghost town. But it's not the slow economic death that puts Vindex on this list. It's the dark story that attached itself to the town's final days. According to local legend, the real end of Vindex came with a mysterious, tragic event. The story goes that a crew of 27 miners went down for their shift and just never came back up. There was no recorded explosion, no cave-in, no official disaster. The men simply vanished in the deep tunnels. The legend claims the company, fearing a scandal or something supernatural they couldn't explain, quietly closed the mine, paid off the families for their silence, and packed up, leaving the town to rot. Now, like many Appalachian tales, there is no official record of 27 miners disappearing from Vindex all at once. Today, almost nothing is left of the town but a few crumbling foundations in the woods. The town is gone, but the story of its lost miners lives on, a haunting reminder of the lives consumed by the mountains. Number 4. Lewiston, Tennessee. The disappearance of Lewiston, Tennessee, wasn't an act of nature or a slow death. It was a deliberate, calculated sacrifice. A town drowned so that a region could get electricity. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the New Tennessee Valley Authority, or TVA, started one of the biggest public works projects in American history. They built a series of dams to control floods and generate power. One of those was the Norris Dam, and the town of Lewiston was right in the path of the reservoir that would form behind it. Founded in the early 1800s, Lewiston was a busy farming community with deep roots. It was home to over 70 families, with churches, a post office, and a main street. But to the TVA, it was just an obstacle. In 1935, the government started buying up the land. Families who had lived there for generations had a choice: take the government's money and leave, or be forced out. It was a heartbreaking process as homes and farms were sold, taken apart, or just abandoned. Perhaps the most grim part of Lewiston's erasure was moving the dead. The TVA had to dig up and move thousands of graves from dozens of cemeteries that were about to be flooded. Imagine watching the remains of your parents and grandparents being exhumed and carted off to higher ground. By 1936, the dam was finished. As the waters of the Clinch River rose, Lewiston, and several other small communities were slowly submerged. The town vanished beneath the waves of the new Norris Lake. Today, when the lake level is very low, ghostly remnants of the past sometimes reappear. Stone foundations and old roads emerge from the water, a silent testament to a town sacrificed for progress. Number 5. Proctor, North Carolina. The story of Proctor, North Carolina, is a tale of isolation and a broken promise. Deep in the Smokies, on the north shore of Fontana Lake, Proctor was once a bustling lumber town. In the early 20th century, it was a hub for a major lumber company, with its own railroad, school, hotel, and hundreds of residents. But its fate, like Lewiston's, was sealed by a massive government project. During World War II, the TVA built Fontana Dam to generate power for the war effort. The creation of Fontana Lake physically cut Proctor and other communities off from the rest of the world. The government made a solemn promise, written down in a 1943 agreement. They swore they would build a new road along the north shore of the lake to give people access to the lands and cemeteries now stranded by the water. This road was meant to be a lifeline. Construction started, but it didn't get far before environmental concerns and engineering problems stopped it in its tracks. Only about 7 miles of the road were ever finished. It ends abruptly at a tunnel that leads absolutely nowhere. To this day, locals call it the road to nowhere. Without that road, Proctor was doomed. The once lively town became an isolated patch of land you could only reach by boat. The residents, many of whom had sold their land trusting they'd still have access, were left stranded. Family by family, they left. The logging industry was already gone, and without a road, there was no future. The town withered and died. Today, what's left of Proctor is part of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. All you'll find are a few foundations, some rusted equipment, and the cemeteries that the road to nowhere was supposed to reach. It's a ghost town born not from disaster, but from a government's broken promise. Number 6. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park, West Virginia. This next one isn't a traditional town, but the land it sits on is the center of a story of repeated tragedy, a place so cursed it was destined to become a ghost. The dark history of the Lake Shawnee Amusement Park site began long before any rides were built. Archaeologists have confirmed the area was once a Native American burial ground. In the late 18th century, the first layer of tragedy was added. A settler named Mitchell Clay brought his family to this spot. While he was out hunting, a local tribe attacked the homestead, killing 2 of his children. Clay later retaliated, and the cycle of violence soaked into the soil. Fast forward to the 1920s. An entrepreneur, likely unaware of the land's grim past, saw it as the perfect spot for an amusement park. He built a Ferris wheel, circular swings, a swimming hole, and a dance hall. For a little while, Lake Shawnee Amusement Park was a place of joy for local coal mining families. But the land's curse, as the legend goes, wasn't done. The joy didn't last. A string of horrific accidents followed. A young girl in a pink dress was killed when a truck backed into the path of the swings. A young boy drowned in the swimming pond. These are just 2 of the 6 deaths said to have happened at the park. The weight of it all became too much, and in 1966, the park closed its gates for good. It was abandoned and left for nature to reclaim. Today, the rusted skeletons of the Ferris wheel and swings still stand, silent and menacing in the overgrown weeds. The place is considered one of the most haunted spots in America, a playground for ghosts where the sound of laughter has been replaced by unsettling whispers. Number 7. Hensley Settlement, Kentucky. High on Brush Mountain in Kentucky, Hensley Settlement tells a different kind of vanishing story. It wasn't a sudden event, but a slow, quiet fading away, a monument to the deep isolation of mountain life. Founded in 1903, the settlement grew into a self-sufficient community of about 12 families. They built their own cabins from chestnut logs, farmed the rugged land, and created a world completely separate from the one developing in the valleys below. For nearly 50 years, Hensley Settlement was basically a time capsule. People there lived a 19th century life well into the 20th century. They had no electricity, no running water, and no roads connecting them to the outside world. They grew, raised, or built everything they needed. It was a life of incredible hardship, but also one of deep community and independence. The end for Hensley Settlement began when the modern world finally came knocking. After World War II, the younger generation felt the pull of a different life. They wanted the conveniences they'd seen elsewhere: cars, electricity, and jobs that didn't rely on the unforgiving mountain soil. One by one, families moved down the mountain. The older generation passed away, and no one was left to take their place. The last resident left in 1951, and the town officially died. The cabins, school, and blacksmith shop were left to the elements. Recognizing its historical value, the National Park Service began restoring the settlement in the 1960s. Today, it's a living history museum, a place where you can walk through a town that vanished not because of a disaster, but because the world simply moved on without it. We're halfway through our trip into Appalachia's lost corners, and trust me, the stories only get stranger from here. If you're hooked on these mysteries, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Number 8. Thurmond, West Virginia. Imagine a town so wild, so dominated by the railroad, that its mayor served for decades from his office in another state. Welcome to Thurmond, West Virginia, a town with one of the most dramatic boom-to-bust stories in all of Appalachia. Located in the New River Gorge, Thurmond was once the beating heart of the region's coal empire. Because of its key location on the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway, it was the busiest depot on the entire line. More coal moved through Thurmond than Cincinnati and Richmond combined. All that railroad traffic brought a ton of money, and with it, a reputation for being completely lawless. Thurmond was a place of hotels and saloons that never closed. The town was so packed that railroad crews had to live in hotels because there was simply no room to build houses. The most famous legend from this time is about the Dunglin Hotel, a massive luxury establishment that supposedly hosted a poker game that ran nonstop for 14 years. It was a place of high stakes, violence, and the center of Thurmond's wild side. So what killed Thurmond? The death of the steam locomotive. As railroads switched to diesel in the 1950s, the giant coaling towers and water tanks that were Thurmond's lifeblood became useless. The mines started closing, and the river of money dried up. The Dunglin Hotel had already burned down in 1930, an event many saw as a warning of what was to come. With the railroad's purpose gone, the town withered. By the year 2000, Thurmond had a population of just 7 people. Today, it's preserved by the National Park Service. You can walk its silent Main Street and see the old depot, a haunting monument to a town that lived and died by the rails. Number 9. The Moon-Eyed People of Fort Mountain, Georgia. Our next stop leaves documented history behind and dives straight into ancient legend. On Fort Mountain in Georgia, there's a mysterious 855-foot-long stone wall. Its origins are a mystery, but Cherokee legend says it was built by a strange race of people who lived there long before them, the Moon-Eyed People. According to Cherokee oral tradition, these people were different. They were said to have pale skin and large, sensitive eyes that couldn't see in the daylight. Because of this, they were nocturnal, living and working under the cover of darkness. They were described as the original builders in the area, responsible for several ancient structures, including the strange wall on Fort Mountain. The legend says they were driven out of the region by the Cherokee, who attacked them at dawn, taking advantage of their weakness to sunlight. The Moon-Eyed People were defeated and vanished, either fleeing west or just disappearing from history. So, is there any truth to this legend? Archaeologists have studied the wall, but they've found no evidence of a pre-Cherokee, light-skinned race in the area. The wall was most likely built by Native Americans around 500 AD for ceremonial or defensive reasons. And yet, the story of the Moon-Eyed People endures. It's a powerful piece of Appalachian folklore that speaks to the deep, layered history of the mountains and the feeling that other, older civilizations once called these hills home. Their town vanished not overnight, but into the mists of legend, leaving behind only a mysterious stone wall and a story. Number 10. Kmart, West Virginia. Some ghost towns are peaceful ruins. Others are dramatic, dangerous scars on the landscape. Kmart, West Virginia, is definitely the second one. Clinging to the steep cliffs of the New River Gorge, Kmart was one of the biggest and most productive coal mines in the region. Started in 1899, the town itself was an engineering marvel, split in two. Kmart Top, on the rim of the gorge, and Kmart Bottom, down by the river where the coal was processed and loaded onto trains. Connecting the two was a steep, terrifying haulage system, a set of tracks running down the mountainside that carried workers and equipment. Life in Kmart was defined by this vertical drop. Miners would ride a man car down the incline each morning into the dark mouth of the mine, a daily descent into danger. The town had everything it needed, with a company store, a school, and houses perched precariously on the mountainside. The decline of Kmart is a familiar story. The easily accessible coal was mined out, and the operation became less profitable. The Great Depression hit hard, and by the early 1950s, the mine closed. The town was officially abandoned in 1962, but because Kmart's location was so remote and rugged, it wasn't demolished. It was just left to rot. Today, its ruins are some of the most spectacular in Appalachia. The skeletal remains of the processing plant and the haulage system still scar the hillside. To reach them, you have to climb down over 800 stairs into the gorge. It's a haunting place, a steel ghost clinging to the mountain, a powerful monument to the industry that once thrived in this impossible location before vanishing. Number 11. Elsewhere, Kentucky. Just like Millbrook Hollow, this next one is pure folklore, a classic grassroots legend. This is the story of Elsewhere, Kentucky. You won't find it in any official history book or on any map. But if you talk to enough old-timers in the eastern Kentucky hills, you might hear whispers of a place that was, and then suddenly wasn't. The legend of Elsewhere describes a small, isolated community tucked so deep in a hollow that it was practically invisible to the outside world. The stories paint it as a place out of time, a settlement of families who had lived on the same spot for generations, shunning the modern world. They were said to be deeply suspicious of outsiders and lived by their own code. The story takes its dark turn in the early 20th century. One version claims the town was hit by a strange, localized plague that wiped everyone out, and the area was sealed off by neighboring communities out of fear. Another, more sinister version hints at something supernatural. It talks about the community making a pact with an ancient entity in the hills, a pact that finally came due, causing the entire town to be swallowed by the forest overnight. And the name, Elsewhere, says it all. It is a place that is, by its very definition, not here. Like Millbrook Hollow, there is no factual evidence that a town called Elsewhere ever existed. It's a ghost story in its purest form, a cautionary tale about isolation, and a town that vanished because, in a way, it was never really there to begin with. Number 12. No Business, Tennessee. The name itself is a warning, no business. Located in what is now the Big South Fork National River and Recreation Area, this was once a real, functioning community. How it got its strange name is a matter of local legend. The valley is accessed by a creek, also named No Business Creek. One story is pretty practical. A traveler came to the creek and asked a local if he could get his wagon across. The local supposedly replied, "You've got no business trying to cross that creek," and the name stuck. A second, more ominous story claims the name was a warning for lawmen. The community, like many isolated Appalachian settlements, was rumored to be heavily involved in moonshining. No business was a clear message: stay out. You have no business here. The community was settled in the late 1700s and survived for over 150 years as a self-reliant farming community. Its disappearance was a slow drain, a lot like Hensley's settlement. The harsh, isolated life was too much for younger generations who were drawn to cities for easier work. The farms were abandoned, the houses fell apart, and the forests started taking back the valley. The federal government bought the last of the private land in the 1970s to create the national park. Today, you can hike into the no-business valley and find old homesteads, stone chimneys, and cemeteries being slowly consumed by the woods. It's a town that vanished because the fierce independence that defined it also made its survival in the modern world impossible. Number 13. Andersonville, South Carolina. The story of Andersonville, South Carolina, is one of a double death. The town was first destroyed by nature, and then its ghost was drowned by progress. Founded in the early 1800s, Andersonville was perfectly located where the Seneca and Tougaloo rivers meet to form the Savannah River. This made it a boom town, a busy trading post for cotton and other goods. For a while, it was even in the running to become the regional capital. But the very river that gave Andersonville life also proved to be its doom. The town was built on a floodplain and was hit by devastating floods again and again. The Great Flood of 1840 was a huge blow, but the final, fatal event was the Big Fresh of 1852. This massive flood wiped out most of the town, washing away homes, businesses, and warehouses. Andersonville was effectively destroyed. The survivors moved to higher ground and founded the nearby town of Anderson, which is still there today. Andersonville was left a waterlogged ghost. For 100 years, the ruins lay dormant. But its second death came in the 1950s with the construction of the Hartwell Dam. Just like the TVA projects, this dam was built to create a massive reservoir, Lake Hartwell. The site of the ruined town was right in the area that would be submerged. In the early 1960s, as the waters rose, the last spectral remains of the once proud trading post were covered by the lake. Today, deep beneath the surface of Lake Hartwell lie the foundations of a town twice lost, once to the river's fury and once to the march of progress. Number 14. Black Hollow, West Virginia. Now we have a mystery that's as recent as it is baffling. A story that spread like wildfire online and blurs the line between true crime and urban legend. This is the story of the Reynolds family disappearance in a place called Black Hollow, West Virginia. The story claims that in 2017, a large, multi-generational family of 14 people, the Reynolds clan, vanished without a trace from their remote, off-grid homestead. According to the stories that circulate online, the family was extremely reclusive. The alarm was supposedly raised when one of the children missed a rare doctor's appointment. When police arrived at the family compound, they found a scene eerily similar to the legend of Millbrook Hollow. Food on the table, cars in the driveway, and all personal belongings, including wallets and phones, left behind. The only thing missing was the entire family. The story goes on that a massive search was launched with hundreds of volunteers, police, and helicopters, but not a single trace of the 14 people was ever found. No bodies, no clothing, no signs of a struggle. The case, the story says, is completely cold. Okay, just like with Millbrook Hollow, we have to hit pause and get real. As convincing and widespread as this story is, there are no credible mainstream news reports or official law enforcement records confirming the disappearance of a 14-member Reynolds family in West Virginia in 2017. It appears to be another incredibly effective piece of internet folklore. The story of their disappearance from Black Hollow has become a new myth, a ghost story for the 21st century, proving the mountain's power to generate tales of the unexplained is as strong as ever. Number 15. The Lost Towns of the TVA. We've talked about a single drowned town, but the true scope of this phenomenon is staggering. Lewiston wasn't a one-off. It was one of dozens of communities deliberately sacrificed to tame the rivers of Appalachia. In its mission to bring progress, the Tennessee Valley Authority oversaw one of the largest internal displacements of American citizens in the country's history. Entire constellations of towns were wiped off the map. In North Carolina, communities like Judson, Bushnell, and Forney were drowned by Fontana Lake, their residents scattered, their history buried underwater. The story of Judson is especially heartbreaking. Before the valley was flooded, the community gathered for one last homecoming. Hundreds of former residents came to say goodbye to their homes, schools, and the land their families had worked for a century. Then they watched as the waters rose and erased it all. In the Jocassee Valley of South Carolina, the same story played out. In the 1970s, a power company built a dam, and the entire valley, with its unique history, was flooded to create Lake Jocassee. The list goes on and on. Across Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina, names like Butler, Morganton, and Owen were erased from the landscape. This wasn't a vanishing caused by folklore or mystery, but by calculated engineering and a government mandate. The people didn't disappear, but their towns, their way of life, and their history did. Today, these lost communities form an underwater archipelago of ghosts, a collective vanishing that remains one of the most profound and unsettling chapters in Appalachian history. From underground fires to drowned valleys, from folkloric plagues to modern internet mysteries, the story of Appalachia is a story of disappearance. The 15 places we've talked about are just a fraction of those lost to time, progress, and the deep, unsettling mystery of the mountains themselves. History gives us one side of the story, of economics, engineering, and migration. But the folklore that sticks around, the tales of strange lights, ancient curses, and sudden departures, tells another. It speaks to a truth felt by anyone who has stood in the deep woods of these ancient hills, that not everything is known, and not everything can be explained. The mountains hold their secrets close. They have swallowed towns, families, and histories, leaving behind only ruins and the lingering, unanswered question: what strange force is at work in these mountains, and where will it surface next? Which of these stories got under your skin the most? Do you know of other lost Appalachian towns or legends we didn't cover? Let us know in the comments below. Your stories help keep these mysteries alive. And for more journeys into the heart of the unknown, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You never know what we'll uncover next.